Welcome to The Bone, the podcast that goes deeper. Here we cut through the noise and get straight to the core of the issues that matter. From real stories to raw truths, we dive deep into the conversations that shape our world and challenge our thinking. We're not afraid to dig in and get to the marrow of it all. Whether it's life, culture, or business in sports medicine, we're here to break it down raw and real. No filters, no fluff, just to the bone. With your host, Shelby Daly, we're getting to the bone. This is a clinically pressed, approved CEU podcast. Find the quiz to gain credit at clinicallypressed.org/courses. Clinically Pressed Company, making the complicated simple through results that give back. Find out more at clinicallypressed.org. Let's get started.
Welcome back to the Bone. Today we have Trish Bare Grounds, and I wanted to have her on because she's accomplished so many crazy things. And I mean, everybody kind of knows Trish, to be honest. If you're in the Taekwondo world, if you're in the extreme sports world, her name has probably come across whatever you're doing. So Trish and I actually met a few years ago. I think in person, it was the US Open in Southern California. We were doing skateboarding and BMX with Kathy Coakley. And, she's just you're here. I'll talk to you like you're here. Trish is such a wealth of knowledge, to be honest. And I do think that she is so specialized in the emergent care. There's so many things that we are taught to be responsive, but I think it's looking at some of the telltale signs of, internal bleeding. I still remember you telling me about spleen ruptures, and that's always stuck with me. And then even jaw reductions, like crazy stuff. But I've also had the pleasure of working with Trish at Black Belt Sports Medicine doing jiu-jitsu coverage. So I got to learn even more from her. Trish, you want to give us just the usual history of all that you've done?
I've been around the sun a few times. I have spent the majority of my career in my own business, Bare Central Sports Medicine, much like Black Belt Sports Medicine. I started because I saw a need with Taekwondo, and it branched into pretty much every form of non-traditional sport that I enjoyed. So we did Taekwondo as well as karate. We've done jiu-jitsu, we've done judo, we've done wrestling, we've done boxing, we've done MMA. But we've gone beyond that and did gymnastics and trampoline. And then that led into parkour and then the extreme sports. Did a lot with BMX. BMX has my heart because I've spent a lot of time there. But skateboarding, I've done snowboarding, I've done skiing, I've done wakeboard, I've done slack lines over the Grand Canyon, jumps in the Grand Canyon, jumps from the Arc de Triomphe in Las Vegas. Some of the crazy stuff that a lot of athletic trainers are like, oh, I don't want to do that. That sounds a little bit beyond crazy. And now I've gone into the realm of the circus, which takes all those crazy people I've met along the way and puts them all into one show, with they all having their own different needs and specialties and cultures that go with it. I am much like the athletes I work with. My ADHD runs very rampant and I get bored easily. So having conquered the traditional sports, working Division I football, I moved on to the non-traditional sports where I saw there was a huge need. And there still is in a lot of areas.
Yeah. So how did you catch the extreme sports bug? Obviously, you're at Division I, but were you just watching them down the street one day and was like, that'd be cool?
Well, I was doing Division I football at University of Miami. I was doing track and field and football at University of Miami. And I volunteered at the local BMX racetrack that's in West Palm Beach. I lived in West Palm Beach. Even when I worked in Miami, I lived in West Palm Beach. And there's a very famous race park there called Okahili. And I used to go out there and volunteer because they really didn't have much of any type of medical coverage back in the 80s and 90s for racing. And from that, a friend of mine who's a chiropractor, who had done a lot of martial arts with me, I drug him into Taekwondo. He had no clue about Taekwondo. He was a big moto guy. He started working in extreme sports, and he says, I have a need for somebody that's not afraid to work with these crazy athletes. And where we have BMX dirt and we have BMX park, we have BMX vert, I'd like you to come out and work some of these with me. And I came out for fun, thinking it'd just be like a one weekend thing. I'd go have fun and do something different. And I was offered a job. And so from there, I did the opposite of what most athletic trainers do. I started at the top of the field, and then I worked my way back down to regional and local and just jams that they do and skate park stuff. Started out in Dew Tour and X Games. Moved into Vans. I was a Vans BMX athletic trainer for 15 years. Feast athletic trainer for 15 years, which is an international version of like Vans type events that has multiple extreme sports. And, from there, the people would see me at events and say, hey, would you come to our event? Sure. You going to buy me a plane ticket? You going to put me in a hotel? Sometimes they weren't paid. A lot of times they weren't paid. But I've seen a lot of places and met a lot of really cool people over the years. And, it fills my soul, my ADHD soul, to be in situations that are never quite the same each time.
Yeah. So what's the one sport that you have not covered yet that you want to cover?
There are two sports that I haven't covered that I've always wanted to, and they're a good old boys club. Because I was a barrel racer, I would love to do rodeo. Mm-hmm. And I have yet to do rodeo, and I'm bound and determined that I will do rodeo at some point. And NASCAR. Taking it all the way to the top of the motorsports. I've done a lot of the lesser stuff. I've done rally car. I've done motocross, enduro, arena cross, those sort of things. And I may be getting a chance to work with Monster Jam this summer. We'll see. Feld Entertainment allows us to request to work different entities that they have. And so I've requested, Monster Jam doesn't have athletic trainers right now like the majority of Feld Entertainment shows do. They have paramedics on site. They have an ambulance on site, but they've never used an athletic trainer. And so I'm trying to work my way into doing a little bit of that and hopefully open a door for somebody else to then take it as a full-time job, because I'm not going to leave my circus job, but circus is going to be down for the next 6 months. So it'll be time to play again.
Yeah. You have to take care of all your monkeys. It's your circus.
Of course. I have plenty of them. One of these days you're going to come out and you're going to meet them all.
Exactly. So how many countries have you actually been to?
At last count, I believe I was at 99 or 100, somewhere in there. I've been to all 50 states. Mm-hmm. And I believe the last count was 100 countries.
That's crazy. That's what some athletic trainers get into the profession to do. And I feel like you've actually accomplished it.
Yeah. And I never set out to actually accomplish that.
Yeah.
I set out to give athletes in sports that didn't have some form of consistent healthcare, somebody that would always be there for them. And with that, I had to be willing to go to some pretty crazy places, some third world countries that, a lot of people probably don't look at going into. But at the same time, then that brought me around to doing events that are televised and in some beautiful places. And I tried to take advantage of every country I go to. I either go a few days early or stay a few days late beyond working, because when I'm working, nothing happens. I don't get to see anything. But if I come in earlier, I stay late, then I go off on my own adventures, or I may go with a team or a few people from the team to see things.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's one thing I'm not seeing as much from athletic trainers is obviously we're not getting paid enough, but they don't really take advantage of the situation sometimes. I know when I was with the professional indoor soccer team, they paid for my apartment and the utilities and everything while we were in season. And then, obviously I got to travel with them and they took care of me. But I just don't see anybody making those type of deals anymore. I don't know.
Yeah, and it's funny, because I know the AT programs now are trying to get athletic trainers to not be taken advantage of, and that's a very good thing to happen. But at the same time, a lot of what I've done has been, I'm known as the art of trade-offs. Of you pay for me to get there, you pay for a hotel, maybe some meals. I'll do it for free. I will do it this time around. You see what it's like. Most of my BMX events, I initially did them as a volunteer with them paying all expenses. Now, expenses to Australia, $2,500 plane ticket, $300 a night for a hotel. In a sense, if you look at the cost of it from the organization or business standpoint, they are paying me in that where they could get local people. Not necessarily that have my expertise or experience, but they could get local people. And that's what a lot of events when they start cutting corners do, as opposed to traveling in an athletic trainer, they'll go to go for and get somebody who's never worked a sport and doesn't necessarily feel comfortable working that sport, but they're there for the paycheck. And I think that's where my generation of athletic training is completely different from today's. I'm not about things. If you know anything about me, I don't care to own a house. I don't own a fancy car. I don't have a lot of bling that I wear. I don't have like 10 dozen shoes besides Vans that are in my closet. I don't have, purses galore and clothes galore and all these things. But I like seeing places. I like learning about places. I mean, Vans was wonderful to me. I did the Australian Open and it was going to happen the week after my birthday. But for my birthday, they sent me 4 days early, paid for the hotel and said, go play. And I went hiking in Blue Mountains. I went to Steve Irwin's zoo. I did a lot of, those bucket list things that you want to do when you're in the Sydney area. I didn't get to go. I chose not to go anywhere else in Australia during that time because that would have cost me more money and there was so much to do and see anyway. So there are perks. You have to learn how to negotiate those perks, but you also have to be on a good standing of being able to pay your bills as well. Yeah. And, if what you're doing is barely paying the bills, then a lot of the things that I've done are not going to be feasible for you unless you take your vacation time and you spend your paid vacation to go do that. And I've had many athletic trainers who've done that, that I've sent with national teams around the world. They take their vacation time and they go to all these exotic places, but then they don't get to actually take a vacation because their vacation time was working. But there's a trade-off.
Comfortable, low profile, flexible, and easy to put on, the Vero ankle brace is simply the best ankle brace for those who move. And that's just about everybody. This brace is adaptable for any phase of injury recovery, whether you're recovering from an ankle sprain, require extra support for your day-to-day, or want to boost your performance. The Vero ankle brace delivers. The Vero ankle brace uses every movement and every step to give you extra boost. The 3-in-1 brace can be worn on either foot, making it the most optimal ankle brace for injury recovery and prevention. The removable stirrups, easy adjust Velcro, and breathable design adapt to your ankle as your strength returns, helping to protect you from re-injury. A dynamic support brace designed by leading orthopedic foot and ankle surgeons. The Vero ankle brace effortlessly adapt to your movements, offering dynamic energy return and support with each step. VeroAnkle.com. Check it out for yourself. VeroAnkle.com. That's VeroAnkle.com.
I think that it's a different mentality today as to whether they want to do that or not. I get a lot of young athletic trainers say, "Oh, I would never do that. I would, if you're not paying me, there's no way you're going to get me to do that." And I'm like, "But you say you want to do what I've done, and they're not going to pay you a big paycheck and pay all these perks. They may, I mean, even Vans didn't pay me a big paycheck. They paid me minimal, but I got a lot of perks out of it. Like, I got spending sprees in Vans stores, which, my child alone, besides my own closet, enjoy quite well. But I got to go to some really cool places.
Yeah. With the professional soccer, indoor soccer, I was with the national team by association. So I went to Guatemala, Australia, Tunisia, a day in Paris, got to go to the top of the Eiffel Tower and stuff. But that's the thing is, I think people disregard the relationships and networks you build by doing these kind of random events that might not pay as well, because it's people that are there that are passionate about it, and they're looking for other people that are passionate also. And once they find people that are willing to put in that extra effort just to be around it and learn more about it, they'll take you under their wing very quickly, and you will move along very quickly also.
And if you're passionate about things, you will find opportunities. Like, I am not passionate about working golf. And I have worked golf. I've worked with some of the greatest. I worked with Jack Nicklaus, but I'm not passionate about golf. So I don't stay there. I don't flourish there. And I think part of what we miss in trying to get athletic trainers the equitable pay that they rightly deserve for all the education and time that they put into the work is that we forget that if there's no passion, then we can't drive to find these other things that we want. And I don't do anything I don't enjoy. So you're not going to find me going back into some of the more traditional sports, except for maybe a weekend, to do PRN stuff or to help one of my friends out. But to go into a full-time position like that, no. I am at the point in my life where that's just not acceptable for me anymore.
Yeah. Well, and it's even just making your resume interesting to talk about too. I mean, I think right out my first certified event, I was covering lingerie football, which is now the Legends Football League.
Right.
And I forget if I got paid or not. I think I got paid for that, and then they kind of started getting cheap after that. But I met an EMT that was covering the event also, and the networking actually got me to start working on set for films and commercials and music videos. So it's kind of that chance and risk of you never know who you're going to meet. Right. And I mean, people always ask like lingerie football, and it's like, yeah, I mean, like the girls are freaking tough, and like they're really cool people ultimately. So it's just something to talk about.
Crazy things like that. The one day events of the extreme sports video shoots, like the Red Bull stuff, the Monster stuff. That it's a long day of filming and stuff, but you meet people that you don't know what their connections are. They may not necessarily just be in extreme sports or in that little niche. Most of the time they're not. If they've gotten to that level, they do a lot of different things. And my position here with Ringling Brothers Circus came from them hearing about my background and asking me to apply. So it was pretty cool to, I'm not one that likes to toot my own horn. I hated setting up my LinkedIn page and my website talking about myself because that's just not me. Yeah, I love sharing everything I've done and how cool it is, but to say I'm an authority and things, that's still a little bit difficult for me, although I've gotten better at it because of being a woman in this world, especially in the athletic training world, and being told women can't do this, they've never done this. Well, as a matter of fact, I have. Do you know so and so? Well, no. How do you know them? Yeah, well, because I've done this.
Yeah. Well, and it's the versatility that comes with these non-traditional sports too. I mean, I remember one of the years doing the US Open that one kid hit his head on the corner of the bowl, and we had to go down and get him on the stretcher, get him out, and he had a really cool gash on his head. But, you don't get to do that in normal traditional sports. Even with the international setting, you in school they always tell you survey the field before the game to see if there's any holes or any problems or anything. In the US, we're pretty good. Going to Tijuana, I remember walking one of the fields. I came out with like a water bottle full of nuts and bolts and pieces of concrete, and I was just like, we can't play on this field. And they're like, well, this is normal here. This is it. And I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna document this, and if anything happens, it's on you guys.
Yeah. And there are a lot of, situations out there that people don't realize. When you come through and they teach you these basics of athletic training of what you should be doing, they don't teach you that that's not necessarily the norm. If you stay in a university or high school setting, it's more a norm. But as athletic training branches out into things that are not based in an institution, it's not normal. Like my tape jobs, the majority of them I modify. They're not what I learned. Things that I do are the things that I see. I mean, I've seen 25 ruptured spleens in my career, and I know athletic trainers that haven't seen one in their career. I have guys that have over 50 concussions in a career. And you say, oh, but how are they still playing? And it's like, when you don't have parameters of a sport that limit these things, you have no way of pulling them permanently. You can pull them for the day because they don't know which ends up, but you can't. You'll be at the next event and you'll see them there, and it's like, oh, here we go again.
Well, and I remember learning from you guys for the US Open that even just the cultural difference of the athlete in that how they are open or receptive to care. They're usually, kind of resistant, and they think there's something attached to it, or, they're usually running from authority. So
right. Well,
it's always interesting.
Extreme sports, not only are they running from you because you're medical, and they're running from you because you're an authority that they think can change what they want to do and tell them what they have to do. And it is a whole cultural thing. Circus has a lot of cultures itself because they've never had an athletic trainer. I'm the first athletic trainer that's been with Ringling Brothers Circus. So getting them to trust me in the first place is very difficult.
Well, and that's where I think if you want to become a more well-rounded athletic trainer, you have to try some of these non-traditional sports, because traditional sports, everybody is conformed to kind of the same rules and expectations and, how everybody should be acting. Where, I mean, you with the BMX, it's such a creative sport. They're pushing boundaries, they're trying new things. I just had somebody on from Red Bull. He used to be one of the physical therapists, and he was like, we are trying things that have never happened ever.
Yeah.
So it's just being ready for it. And I think that makes you a better athletic trainer ultimately.
I think every student coming through as part of their experiences should have to have time in non-traditional sports and sports that they're interested in, not just be forced into it because it's a non-traditional sport. Everybody has interest in things that they would prefer. Some would prefer, the Rockettes to BMX, and by all means, working with the Rockettes is a whole different business than going in and taping up football ankles. It's a lot of students that I've had come through have told me years later that, the emergency training that we do, the spine boarding in difficult positions, in difficult venues, hard to reach positions, helped them to realign how they approached extractions, even in traditional sports, that it made them think a little bit more and change things that worked better for them, still doing the basics that we have to, which, the basis for any extraction is going to be there. But, you can't extract somebody that's crumbled up in the bottom of a concrete bowl the same way that you're going to do on a football field. You can't do the same thing. Like I can't do the same on trapeze net that I can do for football or basketball. So it's, taking those things and working on them and molding them to what works best for you and make it your own.
Yeah. Well, and it's just even the repetitions of the triage portion, just even blood.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, for Taekwondo and Jiu-Jitsu, it's a combat sport. And I mean, the closest thing in traditional is maybe wrestling, which I don't think is as much.
It's not as much,
but there's not as many
snaps
going on too.
But
yeah.
The and things like martial arts, the grappling versus the kicking and punching. Grappling, you have a lot more dislocations, and they're very good to see them actually, not just read about them, but to actually see them managed and cared for on site. BMX, I can show you a blown PCL on a regular basis because they pop their PCLs very easily. And you'll have orthopedists that say, "Oh, people don't tear their PCLs." I'm like, "Well, come to Taekwondo or BMX, and I'll show you about half my population that doesn't have one."
Yeah. So you talked about building trust with your athletes. How do you navigate that with the tough cookies, I guess?
So I have always been a tough love person when it comes to my athletes. I'm not mean, I'm not cruel, but I am very honest. I am vividly honest at times. And I lay it on the line, if it's something that they need to address and they're just kind of blowing it off, I just put it into a graphic perspective of what you're looking at if you don't take care of this or if we don't do this now. I have a lot of athletes that felt intimidated by me in their early years, but that intimidation made them actually do what they needed to do. And they admit that if a guy had said the same thing, it wouldn't have been as intimidating. It's just the fact that a woman is telling them, you're being an idiot right now. This has to go to the hospital right now. I get FaceTime calls of injuries when guys are on the other side of the world. And you think I need to go to the hospital? Yes, absolutely. They need that validation. And they get that because I've spent so much time building their trust. And trust comes from the simplest things. It's learning their names, learning their idiosyncrasies. One of the big things on Do Tour, because we'd have 70 people in an open qualifier. You have 25 that go to semis and then 12 that go to finals. But you'd have this group of 70 here. And I made sure that I didn't just learn the names of the ones who got hurt. I learned everybody's name. So when they showed up at another contest and I say, "Hey, so-and-so, how you doing?" They're like, "You remember me?" And that builds a lot more trust, not only with them, but the other athletes around them. Because they're like, "Oh, you've worked with her before? How is she?" And it makes a big difference. I mean, with the circus, because I'd never had athletic trainers before, I spent a lot of time, during rehearsals, asking them about, what they've done. Because about 50% of my circus people have grown up in a circus. So you ask them about, other acts they've been in, other things that they've done and what they prefer and how do they do this. Because as a gymnast, they drive me nuts because they don't have coaching. So their mechanics on some things, it's like, that's not supposed to be physically possible the way you're doing it. And that's why you land on your face half the time. So being able to not judge, but say, "Hey, as a gymnast looking at this, as a dancer looking at this is what I see that you're doing differently than what I would do." And just having those conversations, not demeaning them, not saying you're doing it wrong or, just saying, from my perspective, this is how I would have done it. It's interesting to see the way you're doing it and have always done it type thing. Like I have guys on our Wheel of Destiny, which are double wheels that spin in the air, 45 feet in the air. And they do front flips on them without being able to do front flips standing on the ground. And I'm like, learn it on the ground first, please. Why does it have to be the rotation of the wheel that gets you to flip?
Yeah.
But it's spending time, and I think that's where people get in a rush. That I've got to do the paperwork, I've got to do these treatments, I've got to fill the water, I got to do this. That stuff can sit and wait as you learn them, and with those that have significant others that are there for long periods of time, I try to learn about them and ask them about them. If I don't see them, oh, they didn't come this time. Oh, she's injured. What happened? And a lot of empathy helps to bond that trust, that everlasting trust of athletes that will call you even when they're on another team, because you took the time to get to know them and really invest in them.
Yeah. So you're about to wrap up your first season with the Circus. How long did it take you to put together the emergency action plan or be prepped for it or teaching the people around you of what we're doing if you have to act?
So when I came to the Circus, I asked them for their emergency action plans. And the only emergency action plans they had were for the crew as they build the trusses. Everything that hangs from the ceiling. They had their fall rescue emergency action plan. And essentially that's all they had. And so you have all these dangerous acts that are going on with no way of knowing how we're going to extricate them, how we're going to handle this. Knowing that Circus has had some massive tragedies over the course of the 147 tours that they've done. And so what I did is during that time learning about each of the performers and what they did, I spent time learning the mechanics of their sports and being able to apply that to sports that I have done and work with the mechanics of that. And during rehearsals each day for 6 weeks of our 3-month rehearsals, I was doing what the performers called my doom and gloom writing. So I was writing every scenario of what could go wrong and how we could address it. My EAPs for Circus is 52 pages long. So it's for every act and every different position they can end up in, which, some of the apparatus are really difficult to work with. And from there, I had to then, because I'm the only athletic trainer and I have 75 performers and 50 crew members, I had to figure out a way that I was going to be able to extricate, because you can't extricate by yourself. No matter how good you are, there's no way you're going to do it by yourself. So then I simply asked crew members if they were interested in learning how to help me. And I have a solid crew of 6 and an expanded crew of about 15 that know the basics and can assist. But I have my 6 core people that are positioned at upstage and downstage, so that no matter where things happen, I have people that practice with me every week. And having worked US Open with me, I am fanatical about going through scenarios and actually putting somebody on a board and seeing how you're going to get out of there. And we do that. We have a lot of apparatus that, paramedics come in, they have no idea how to work with those things. So we have them down and boarded by the time paramedics get there.
Now, more than ever, athletic trainers are becoming inundated with the growing volumes and sources of data surrounding clinical injury management. In fact, the purpose of data has changed. Whether it's pre-participation examinations, electronic medical records, concussion management, nutrition, or wearable devices, athletic trainers are constantly faced with new and complicated challenges interpreting data to drive patient care outcomes, reduce injury rates, and show practitioner value. To get ahead of this change, athletic training departments turn to Preventix, a data analytics solution provider. With over 25 years of athletic training and clinical data experience, Preventix empowers athletic training and sports medicine organizations with tools necessary to quantify the impact of care interventions on patient success and outcomes. As a trusted partner, Preventix works with you to build a strategy that addresses your specific pain points, integrating all your data sources, providing clean, reliable data, dashboards, and metrics that can be immediately accessed by stakeholders at the point of care. Don't let messy, siloed data continue to negatively impact your care delivery initiatives and practitioner value. Unlock the power of your clinical data today. Visit Preventix.com for more information. Preventix.com.
During shows, we actually have an ALS unit on site, but they still do not do the extracting. We do all the extracting. So it took the rest of another 6 to 8 weeks of training with crew. And then we practice every other week on the road, a different scenario. I give them a list and they pick the one that they want to learn that week. And we have a bucket list of ones that I want to make sure that we go over. And some of the ones that they were scared of got pushed towards the end because they just did not feel confident in that. The one that I thought that they weren't going to want to do because it's the most extensive is the trapeze net. And they were all wanting to do that one. So it was kind of funny.
Well, that's with the US Open. I felt very blessed that we did go through the spine boarding. I think the only thing we didn't take into effect was that it was probably 3:00 in the afternoon in August. And the concrete was hot. And that guy was down there when we had to go extract him. And so me and Tori are down there on our knees in shorts, hands and knees trying to do it. You know, we're yelling for towels to get on underneath the guy so he didn't burn, but since he was knocked out. And then, I remember us practicing running to get out of the bowl too, which was very useful.
You don't think about that. How do you get out of a swimming pool that doesn't have water in it?
Yeah.
There's no stairs. There's no ramps. There's no specific setup in most of those situations.
Yeah. And the most frustrating was that the EMS showed up and then they jumped down and then they didn't really know how to get out or like help us get the board out. It's just like, just get out and be up there to grab it from us. You don't need to be the heroes down here. Just help us get them out.
And that's half the battle, half the time. I like when we have EMS on site and we can do a briefing and say, hey, this is how it's going to go down. You guys are going to stay on top and we're going to hand off and they're yours. When I hand them off to you, they're yours. I'm not going to try to get in your way, but we know how better to get them out of here. And we could hand them off to you easily. We're not going to walk out of here with this. There is going to have to be somebody on top receiving. So it would be better the people that are going to be doing the care to be there ready to receive instead of getting stuck down in the bowl, which, a lot of non-agile EMS, we then have to pull them out whenever they decide to jump in.
Yeah. So when you were starting out and volunteering and getting involved, at what point did you decide to create your own business?
Well, I had been with Taekwondo for 6 years and was tired of the volunteer setup of, whoever showed up. It was never coordinated. If you were there, you could be in the medical area and you brought your own stuff. And it really was not a great setup. And I was at University of Miami at the time. And I was like, this is an Olympic sport. This is an Olympic sport. Why do they not have basic medical care? Why don't they have what I have at University of Miami? Why is this so difficult of a concept? And don't just tell me money. Because there are sponsorships, there's a way around this. I mean, I proved that because all of our medical supplies were provided by sponsors or donations for the entire 35 years that I was doing it. They did not buy supplies. They weren't going to buy supplies. So I just wanted a sport that I was falling in love with to know that they were cared for as much as the football players that they see on TV, and It took a lot. I mean, it it took me down the road that then I eventually did my doctoral dissertation um, in the sport, and from that, rules were changed pertaining to headshots for kids.
Mm.
Um, but it it takes a lot of things that we don't learn as an athletic trainer. You know, most athletic trainers don't take business classes. They don't take marketing classes. And that was, I learned all of that on the fly. You know, I went to NATA meetings and didn't like most of the topics. I'd spend all my time in the exhibit hall, you know, getting sponsors and working on donations. And I got pretty close with a lot of the vendors that were there because of that, and gave them opportunities to, you know, have their logo on things, or, you know, be seen that, yes, we support USA Taekwondo. You know, so those sort of things. But we're not taught those things. And I think that's kind of a shortcoming of athletic training programs is we should have some basic know how to market yourself, know how to run a business being you. I mean,
Hmm.
my business started out as only me. You know, it advanced to like black belt sports medicine of having a lot of people that are involved in different areas over time. And it allowed me to have students in there to pass on what we'd learned, you know, what we had painstakingly learned. But you know, it takes a lot of work and a lot of knowledge. And for me, I learned the hard way on a lot of things. And you know, the good thing is I can keep newer businesses from going through those same pitfalls, you know, when we have discussions. But you know, at the time it's like, God, I'm an idiot. Why did I do it this way? You know,
Yeah.
it's simply just because we don't have the education or direction coming out as athletic trainers.
Yeah. Well, I'm still surprised that they don't require the students to get their own liability insurance to go through the program. I know that they protect them through, the clinical rotations, but I'm surprised
But
that
they
they.
don't. They don't.
Oh, they don't?
Because of the fact when I have students that come through the circus, because
Mm-hmm.
I bring students in as well with the circus to learn about performance medicine and a lot of the crazies that I deal with. But a lot of the universities won't allow their students to come out unless we provide student liability insurance for them. And that's not something that Feld Entertainment's going to do. Most businesses are not going to put
Yeah.
themselves in that position. You know, I always tell them, you know, if you want them to have insurance, student insurance is relatively inexpensive. You know, for
Yeah.
the most part, it's $50 and under for student liability insurance. And I think every single student should have student liability insurance so when they're going out, because you never know what's going to happen and what you'll get in the middle of. You
Yeah.
know, it's still going to be my license that gets smacked as opposed to the student, but there's always a gunshot effect that they get named in it, and you don't want your name on anything that's going to last for your career.
Yeah.
But yeah, there are a lot of universities that if I won't say that we'll provide liability insurance, or I won't provide the liability insurance of Feld Entertainment, they won't allow students to come out, which
Mm.
I'm like, they can't get an experience like this. You know,
Yeah.
this is not an everyday thing that you can just go find another organization to do this with.
Well, are you providing a clinical experience, or is
Yeah,
it just an extra? Oh,
yeah.
okay.
So I bring in students that want to come in. We've had ones that come in for one show, one day, for a full weekend. Um, I had one that was with me for 4 straight weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Um, as part of their clinical rotation, they had to get a certain number of hours. I think they had to get 100 hours in for that clinical rotation. But yeah, they come in and they get to be in the training room as well as the weight room with me, seeing and doing some treatments, rehab, learning how to do paperwork, how to work with workman's comp, which is a whole nother monster. Um, and the culture of performance medicine that is so different than being in a university or high school setting. The things that you have to think about and
Yeah.
differences of how you approach things. So yeah, I give them that opportunity. I've been trying to convince them to do a fellowship where they would pay at least for them to travel, eat, and be housed. and be with us for, that 6 month or 1 year period for a fellowship.
Mhm.
Still working on that one. Haven't quite got that one accomplished, but I'm working on it.
Well, I know you'll get it done. That's so interesting. I guess I thought either the clinical rotations had an agreement with the schools to provide coverage, but I guess I was wrong on that one.
Yeah, a lot of the schools I've come across, they want you to provide it, and they want you to take, courses, which the ones that are like 30 minutes, I'm like, fine, sure. I've been doing this for 40 years now, but sure, I'll take your little course that tells me how to be a good athletic trainer and mentor. But liability insurance is, when you're talking about going with a company, and a huge company, because Feld Entertainment has so many different shows that they always look at lawsuit possibilities. So anything that's going to come back at them, they're going to be, nope, not doing it.
Yeah. Well, and I'm surprised how many athletic trainers just don't have personal liability.
That's true as well. I mean, $200 a year. Come on, it's not that difficult. I know we don't get paid well, and I understand that. But when you can get liability insurance for less than what they want you to pay for NAT dues, yeah, it's a no-brainer for me. I'll go the BOC route and not have NATA membership, which I haven't in a long time, to be able to pay that instead. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think it's odd that we don't have a lot of medical law in our program too.
Right.
Since we are at a high risk, since we are returning people to play most of the time. It's just, why wouldn't you protect yourself? Like, I know that your organization says that they will provide for you, but I think they can take it away at any time too if they don't want to cover you.
They don't even have to tell you that they're no longer paying for it.
Yeah.
They can just be done with it.
Yeah. I mean, I found that out at my last employer in California when we switched heads. She was looking through the paperwork. She's like, you guys have never had liability insurance. And I'm like, well, thank God I have mine.
Raise the bar in 2025. Complete your BOC certification maintenance requirements early. Don't forget that 2025 is a reporting year for athletic trainers. Are you on track to complete your BOC certification maintenance requirements? Find out today by logging into your BOC profile at bocatc.org/BOC360. That's right, it's time, and this year is the year to renew your certification maintenance requirements. Check it out at bocatc.org/BOC360.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's a world where you used to be, as an athletic trainer, the only person that could be sued was a doctor. Yeah. And that has definitely changed.
Yeah.
And it's everyone for themselves anymore.
Yeah. So with your many years of being a business owner, can you give some of the hardships that you've gone through and some of the high points that you've had?
Trusting people too much is a downfall for me. Trusting, and the larger the organization, the more you think you can trust them. And that's not necessarily true. They don't pay their bills any better than the smaller institutions. Once again, that lack of business background of having a contract in place with each and every organization and event is a must-have. And I've learned the lesson the hard way. Lost a good chunk of money from them deciding not to pay beyond the 50% deposit. I mean, there are companies, there are organizations, I require them to pay 50%, in some cases the full bill, before we work, because they have done me wrong too often, and I get tired of not being able to pay my people. And the martial arts world is very big on not paying their bills, unfortunately. They have all these great philosophies, but bottom line, they'll have every excuse in the world to not pay you on time and take forever to pay you.
Yeah.
being a nonprofit being the biggest one that they'll use. Well, we're a nonprofit. Well, I'm a for-profit that is not making I'm not making profit, but I'm not paying my bills unless you pay yours.
Yeah.
So, it's understanding that, making sure that you legally CYA. And from the very get-go, I've had friends who are lawyers that have guided me quite well. I've had consent from medical treatment for events since the 80s, when we didn't do them. I've had standing orders since the 90s, before we had to have them. I have had contracts since being done wrong numerous times that are highly detailed. And with contingencies, if you don't pay by this date, this much more will be added. And getting those things. I mean, you can get templates for these things that you can modify that are rather, I think the first contracts that I did with a $5 CD program. So you don't have to go pay thousands of dollars for people to do these things for you, but you need to have them in place, and you need to be really good with paperwork. I have been in court enough times to know that paperwork saves your butt every single time, and making sure that you can read it matters, which I have a lot of personnel. I'm like, you need to rewrite this because I can't read a thing that you wrote. I only know it's you because I recognize the scribble. I can't even recognize your signature. So, having a good database to put it all into is awesome. That you can generate different types of reports to be sent out. Not absolutely necessary if you're on a shoestring budget, but make sure that you have the paperwork and it's organized where you can find it when you have to.
Yeah, definitely. Everything should be written down.
Yeah. And be able to back up what you believe. I mean, I've been in front of Congress several times over different things in martial arts of, how the head injuries that come from it in young age, and, being able to stand by what you do, why you do it, and how that benefits people, how it works. Don't just throw numbers or papers around, be able to back it up.
Yeah. Okay, what's something good? What was the best part of being a business owner?
The best part was, and still is, seeing athletes or students who've come through and have gone on to create their own businesses and their own destiny of what they enjoy. And they come back and say, I couldn't have done it without you. You changed my direction. You changed my thought processes. You enabled me to follow my dreams. And I think that's the part that keeps me in business, is being able to help people chase their dreams. Paperwork, not so much. I despise paperwork, but I'm good at it. That doesn't mean I like it.
Yeah.
But and politics. I mean, I come from a family of government officials. Both my parents were in the FBI. My brother was Secret Service. Another one of my brothers flew airplanes for government. So there's a lot of government in my background, and I despise politics. Absolutely despise. I think people should be honest and kind and provide equal opportunity for everything. So I went into medicine, sports medicine, thinking I was going to be as far away from politics as possible. And you work Olympic sports in particular, it's more political than Congress. And if you're not good at playing those political games, you'll get burnt out fast. You'll get pissed off fast. You won't be effective. And so the very brazen, very vocal female I was coming out of college, I had to learn how to utilize that voice, tone it in the proper way, let people think it was their idea that things got done sometimes, just so it got done. those parts of business I don't like so much. And now that I'm not doing as many big events with my company, is a breath of fresh air that I'm not dealing with that.
Yeah. A little bit more control in your sphere.
Yes. And not having to be controlled by, situations or people.
Yeah. So, with your company and the people that you've worked with, personality-wise, would you say it takes a certain athletic trainer to work these non-traditional events, or do you think
Absolutely.
that everybody can do it? Okay.
And you'll see different personalities come in, and it isn't just the athletic trainers. It's your physicians, it's your paramedics, it's your chiropractors, your massage therapists, all the different entities that you blend together in events. First off, you have to have personalities that can blend.
Mm-hmm.
But you also have to have a certain type of personality that isn't in it just for the money, because you're not going to get rich doing this. You have to love what you're doing. But even in the business half of it, of knowing who to room with who so that I don't have to deal with more headaches is important. They may work well together, but they don't do well when it's just one-on-one type thing.
Yeah.
Or to even have an event, I'll send them to a different event. They're great, but they may be great more as a single entity. So I'll send them to a smaller event as opposed to the ones that blend well and can be in the big group of medical teams. So it's knowing the personalities that you have and kind of weeding them out, the ones that cause you a lot of headaches. I'm sorry. I know you're a great athletic trainer in your own realm, but you don't fit quite well into the scope of all the personalities that we have here. And doing that in a professional manner in which that you say, I'll write you, a reference. Your abilities are great. Your personality sucks, but your personality doesn't mean everything in every place.
Yeah.
The more people you have, the more you need to be able to blend.
Yeah. Well, that was when I was in my master's program. PBR was coming to town, and I really wanted the chance to do that. And I didn't get chosen, and I was just like, why? Like, this was perfect. I want the extreme experience. And they're like, those cowboys will whoop you up and down if you give them any attitude. And I was like, okay, fine. I'll give you all that one.
Yeah, and it's funny. A lot of times you really think you want to work a sport, and then when you get into it, it's like, oh, this isn't really what I thought it was going to be.
Yeah,
Maybe
exactly.
I don't think this one's high on my priority list anymore.
Yeah. So let's see, what did I want to say next? So with these non-traditional sports or activities, whatever you want to call it, how do we plug more athletic trainers into supporting those athletes?
I think that we need to start in our educational programs. So the AT programs, they need to not be as controlling of where you can get your experience. And in my experience, that's been a deterrent of getting them into BMX. When I lived in Greenville, North Carolina, home of BMX freestyle, I had over 50 guys that trained there in 2 facilities. And I approached the athletic training program of the university that was there. And I said, well, this is not a traditional sport. We don't feel that our athletic trainers will get any benefit from it. If you've not been in the situation, you can't judge what kind of benefit. And there's always benefit. Experience is benefit. I think a lot of students today limit themselves of experiences. They only do what is required and nothing extra. They don't take on events that are over the weekend because they just don't want to work. That we're being taught work-life balance, and definitely athletic trainers are some of the poorest at work-life balance. But at the same time, there has to be some positives out of enjoying what you do and enjoying learning from each other. I don't necessarily want to try a new sport because I think I'm the greatest thing that's ever come to town. I want to go and learn from somebody that's been in that sport and how they approach things differently, how they do this. And maybe I'm taking some of those ideas and bringing them back and using them. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I've had many practitioners over the years that come to events and are like, hey, I can use this back in my practice. And I had never thought of doing this.
Yeah.
And I think the sharing of knowledge is just as important as the experience of trying out a new sport. I mean, trying out new theories. I mean, no two athletic trainers think exactly alike and do exactly alike.
Mm-hmm.
And the more exposure that you have to different people, different environments, different cultures, different political systems, the more rounded you become for your own part of the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a niche in action sports and martial arts, but do I enjoy going to, other events? Yeah. Yeah. I'm getting ready to go do figure skating for a few weeks.
Bring your parka.
Yeah. Yeah. Me and ice aren't necessarily the best of friends, but we're going to have to become friends here for a few weeks.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, I think I had an experience with you is we went to Las Vegas for some of the big jiu-jitsu events, and we've always had problems with response of EMS. And I think afterwards, you've covered a lot of events in Vegas, and it was kind of a brain trust of like, how have you managed this in other events? Because obviously the Vegas Convention Center is huge.
It's humongous.
And
Yes.
how do we efficiently get people where they need to be? Even just getting them into the event area. I mean, we had 3 different pods of 12 mats. Like, how do you direct them efficiently through the crowd? So it's one of those things of learning from other athletic trainers from events that they've covered. And, it's those little details that can make your life so much easier.
Uh-huh. And sometimes it's something as simple as a different product that that you use at an event, and it's like, oh, wow, that makes life so much easier. Why didn't I ever think of that? And that's why it's the melting of the minds that I love at big events where we have a lot of personnel there, a lot of APs, a lot of orthopedists and chiropractors and physical therapists, massage therapists, of blending in and sharing knowledge that I love. I mean, it's so beneficial. I'm 60 years old now, and you think I've stopped learning? No, I will learn until the day I die, because things are always evolving. I mean, athletic training isn't what it was when I came into it in the 80s. It's nothing like what it was. We were called athletic trainers. That's about as close of a reality of what it is today as to what it was then.
Are you in a position of financial danger? Working more than 40 hours and having to do per diem on the weekends just to make ends meet? Or are you financially dangerous, in control of your money and future? Athletic trainers spend years mastering the body and learning how to care for athletes. But how well do you understand your finances? Many in the field are underpaid, overworked, and left without a financial game plan. That's where we come in. At Benjamin Stackham's, not only do we provide holistic financial coaching and education to help you take control of your money and shift your money mindset, but we also help you with a generational wealth plan and future-proof your investments and retirement. For athletic trainers, by athletic trainers. Your financial future doesn't have to be uncertain. Let's get you in control. Visit benjaminstackhams.com today.
You had mentioned about the business aspects and even just the experiences of students. Are there any other things that we should be teaching in the athletic training programs that you are seeing the students lacking these days?
I think that we've gotten so book heavy book knowledge, that hands-on experience, getting your hands on things, getting them on the body, getting it on the injuries, actually doing the treatments. Any student that's ever worked with me, particularly at Taekwondo events, that, they go through what they think it is, and I'm like, well, how would you treat that? Well, I don't know. How would you treat it? I'm not answering you that. You have the education. You just told me what you thought it was. I do a true sink or swim with, I have been known to push athletic trainers out into the ring to, that are students of, evaluate it,
Mhm.
and we don't do enough of that. Yeah. And this comes from the fact that I came through the experience first programs.
Mhm.
I had a minor in athletic training in college. My bachelor's degree was not in athletic training. I had a minor in athletic training. I had 2,000 hours of athletic training experience. And I came out of that. And yeah, sometimes I may not know the exact term of that test, and those are easy to pick up after you know how to do them. But I have so many students that come in now, and you give them a fake scenario, and what would you do? Well, I would check if he's breathing. I'm like, he's talking to you. He's breathing. I think that we've gotten so book heavy. It's kind of like when you call in for technical help on your computer,
Mhm.
and you tell them what you've done, and they still have to go down their list of what's written, of what they're supposed to ask and what they're supposed to do, that
Yeah.
they can't skip those steps and go to where it's necessary. And I think that we're cheating our students by them not getting enough practical experience. Students, I had to have them 1,800 hours before I could sit for board exams.
Yeah.
And those were true hours. Those weren't observation hours, didn't count. So your first 200 hours didn't count. So I had 2,000 hours before I sat for my board exams. And I think we're doing them an injustice. And when they need diversity, everybody doesn't necessarily have to have football, but they need to have various things. They need a sport where they hit hard. They
Yeah.
need a sport where they bend a lot. They need a sport where balance is a key. Speed is a key. Um, in different cultures. I mean, you've seen one with Taekwondo. We have a different type of Asian culture than Jiu-Jitsu does. There's a lot of pomp and circumstance that goes with Taekwondo that doesn't go with a lot of the grappling sports.
Yeah.
And knowing these differences and understanding them and being able to make your way through those waters, even if you only work with football, basketball, and baseball, is still very important to understand those people skills. And I
Yeah.
don't think that we give our students that opportunity. We want them to memorize everything, be able to pass the exam, but not necessarily be able to operate independently, to think independently, think creatively. Modifying tape jobs. I blow students' minds all the time. I say, well, I modify this tape job and do this for this, and this reason. And they're like, I never knew we could do that. And it's like, I very rarely do a basic tape job. Of course, I
Yeah.
do a lot of kinesio tape, which is a whole different realm. But, you know, being able to say, yes, you should be able to modify things, change things to assess what you need, what isn't working, what we want to try. And I think that that's a shortcoming of athletic training, that we don't give them that hands-on time to be creative and use their own brains before we shove them out in the world, and the wolves get them.
Yeah.
I'm terrified for some of these students that come out of an AT program and go straight into head athletic trainer of a high school all by themselves with nobody to sound off of, to be able to question, is this really what I want to be doing? Or is there a better way of doing this? Or can you help me think about this? Because I've never seen this, never done this before.
Yeah. Well, that was moving over here. I had a newly certified athletic trainer under me, and the second day of the job, I was here by myself, and I had a kid laterally laterally dislocate his ankle in a game. And I mean, I had looked over the EAP, but I mean, it's pretty easy figuring out how to get EMS into a field. And luckily, my car was parked in front of the gate. But, I relocated it to decrease pain, stabilized, got somebody to call, and we got him in and out. And she came back after the tournament she was away with the other team with, and she's like, I don't even know the EAP. And I don't know what I would have done in that situation. And I'm just like, you've been here for how long? And you don't know how this facility functions, and you don't know how to respond to an emergency situation? Like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
So,
well, I mean, we see this a lot with like dislocations. I mean, I work with sports where there are a lot of dislocations and I reduce them immediately.
Yeah.
And have so many students or even certified ATs that are like, oh, I would never reduce that. And it's like, you reduce the additional damage as well as reducing their pain, as long as you have been instructed properly. I mean, the jaw dislocation reduction that you were talking about earlier, that's something that I created over time with an oral maxillofacial specialist that also was a martial artist, and told him I was tired of getting bit every time I reduced a jaw, because the standard way to reduce a jaw in the 80s was to stick your thumbs inside the mouth and grab and pull. And I got bit multiple times and I hated it. And so the reduction that I taught you is what came out of that. Well, how can we do this with my hands versus your man hands that were huge? I can't grab the jaw the same way that you can, and working through that to reduce the possibility of further damage of, any soft tissue, any nerves, and being able to do that on site. I mean, I've had guys that we've reduced their jaw and they had appeared to have a pretty nasty concussion, reduce the jaw, and all of a sudden they're clear. They're neurologically intact. And it's all simply from the displacement pressure on nerves that was changing things.
Yeah. Well, and that's where I always question about concussions ultimately is I don't think we truly have even, gotten into the deep end of what is causing the symptoms. We think it's fully the brain and bleeding and stuff. And I'm like, I think some of the nerves and the muscles are causing a lot of, or even just the eyes are causing a lot of the problems that we're experiencing.
Yeah, the eyes have a lot to do with it, and that gets put aside as nonsense quite often. Things like prism glasses and saccades and doing things like that. I mean, balance training. Just going from a flat surface to a pillow, that's not balance training. That's not. We don't stand still in any sport that I know of.
Yeah.
We spin, we run, we zig, we zag. If we're not testing balance and training for that, we're not helping them. I mean, I just had I had crew members that were out with concussions, and getting their doctors to understand the amount of light and sound and pressure from having to rush around in the dark was going to put on them when you want to give them a full release. And I'm like, they're not ready for it. Do a modified release. Don't fully release them, because they're not, but they're so, oh no, they're fine. And I'm like, and then they get here and I have to send them back out because they can't handle it.
Yeah.
So there's a disparity in knowledge in a lot of things that we do. We like to say that we're a jack of all trades, that we do a little bit of everything in medicine. We have to have a bit of knowledge of medicine in all these areas as well in order to be that jack of all trades. And
connecting those dots.
Yeah. And people still don't want to look at the fact that we have a medical license. Most states, our licenses come through the medical board, or the athletic training division of the medical board, outside of a few out there that just stuck them wherever, like South Carolina that put them under EMTs. But yeah, I mean, our organization still has yet to promote us like the nursing has done, like physical therapy has done. They've had national campaigns where there's not a single person in this world that does not understand what a physical therapist or a physio is.
Yeah.
Or that what a nurse is. But they're far more unlikely to know what an athletic trainer does.
Yeah.
And what their education is.
Well, and the fact that we're obviously expanding into the industrial setting and all these other different areas, I do have a problem with how we're marketing, is that we're just National Athletic Training Month, they give us these posters and we put them in our athletic training room. And it's like, well, an athlete knows what we are.
Mm-hmm.
Why isn't that going across campus to the regular student body? Or in the communities, why aren't we designating people to go to the Chamber of Commerce meetings and be able to sit in and actually educate some of the, top leaders of the community of what are we doing and how are we doing business? We keep kitty cornering us in the places that we're comfortable, and we're not getting to the wide stage. And I did a post a few weeks ago of this Maha movement. Doesn't matter what political party you are in, but it is a health movement, and we should really catch on to the coattails of this if we want to gain any momentum at the moment, because everybody's talking about it. Why wouldn't we be a part of that?
Well,
hey listeners, ever find yourself on the sidelines needing that one crucial item? Look no further than Nexus Sports Medicine. Nexus is your go-to partner for creating comprehensive medical kits and accessories tailored for athletic trainers in any setting. From high school fields to professional arenas, Nexus has you covered. These kits are designed by an athletic trainer with meticulous organization, ensuring that you're always prepared, no matter the situation. Stay ahead of the game with Nexus Sports Medicine and keep your athletes safe and thriving. Check out Nexus Sports Medicine at nexus-sportsmed.com. That's Nexus, Nexus-sports, SPORTSMED.com to find out more and get your perfect gear today.
It's funny. When I started my company, the NATA told me athletic trainers can't own companies like mine. that it's illegal. And I'm like, can you show me what laws make it illegal to do what I do?
Mm-hmm.
And they never could. And NATA and I went back and forth for a while, and I was just like, I'm doing me. This is a need. This is a niche that nobody is addressing. And so, if you can find a law that you say I'm breaking, then let me know.
Yeah.
But, I think a lot of times in our own organization, we fight against creativity of branching out, taking things in different directions. I'm not big on the industrial athletic trainer. I don't think that's an athletic trainer. There's nothing athletic about it. So for me, that should be another career field. What you do there, because you're limited on what you can actually do as an athletic trainer. It's basically ergonomics that you can do as far as rehab goes. Everything has to be sent out to, urgent care hospital or physical therapist. You don't get to really do a lot on your own within those settings, from discussions I've had with people that are in those settings. It's more like a workman's comp setup. And they're very restrictive as to what you can do. Once again, we're getting in that mindset of not being creative and not thinking outside the box for it. Yeah.
Well, I think the one positive is that they are actually paying for the skill that we are providing them, though at a reasonable rate. So it's kind of like, the ergonomics and wellness, I think, definitely is a category of athletic training. It is prevention, risk management. But I could understand that it's still limiting on the full scope of what we can do to an extent.
That in most university settings, you're not shipping everybody out to do the ACL rehab.
Yeah.
That's done within house.
Yeah.
So it's one of those fine lines that, athletic trainers have not yet defined. We've tried to be like physical therapists. We've tried to be like physician assistants. We've tried to be all these other career fields instead of just focusing on our own and defining it and making sure that everybody knows what that definition is, understands, and appreciates it.
Well, and I think it's addressing why can't we do workers' comp claims? Why don't we have access to that? And I think that's kind of the next step of exploring, because I mean, Canadian athletic therapists, they have access to workers' comp claims, and they're our cousins basically. So obviously they don't have licensure, and there's some other different things, but it's so close. How is their government letting them do it, but we don't have, or we're restricted on being able to take those patients?
Well, and the thing of it is think about, every professional sport has workman's comp. They don't ship everything out to be handled. They handle everything in-house. So it's not that it's workman's comp. It's the following of certain forms of workman's comp that are not set up to actually have an athletic trainer that's there on site. It's people who don't know how to do these things that the workman's comp is set up for. Not people who actually have the education, experience, and licensure to manage. It's micromanaging the athletic trainers in those situations to not let them to decide that this is what's needed.
Yeah. Okay, I have one more question. Physician oversight. I know a lot of people think it's a lot of risk for us not to have physician oversight, but do you ever see athletic trainers working autonomously?
I started out autonomously. Of course, before licensure was a thing. All we had was BOC. And back then it was part of NATA. BOC wasn't even separate from NATA when I first became certified. I feel that it's good to have a physician who works with you as a partner. The medical director I have for my company, he was a certified athletic trainer first and a medical doctor second. I've had two of them that were athletic trainers first and then physicians. So they truly believe in and understand what an athletic trainer does. So the standing orders for my company are quite different than what you find with the standing orders that are with a physician that's trying to CYA. I feel that it needs to be a partnership of saying, I've got this really weird case that I just can't quite get a grip on. This is what it is. What do you think? And being able to have that professional conversation, that is where it's very beneficial. I have learned a lot from my medical directors, as well as physicians that have worked with my company over the years. Do I think that a physician should be so controlling that I have to answer to everything I do every day? No, I don't. Why do we spend so much time getting a master's degree now? And then those of us that went on and got PhDs, why are we spending so much time educating ourselves on these things when other healthcare providers, nurse practitioners, physician assistants have the same amount of time in education as we do, and they have autonomous. They still have a physician supervisor, but they don't have to ask, can I do this? Can I do that? And I think a lot of standing orders with physicians are very restrictive and keep the athletic trainer from doing what they were trained to do. And so I think there's got to be a sweet spot in there somewhere to working in a partnership as opposed to under.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I wasn't sure I knew what your take was probably going to be, but it was...
I own a company that the doctors work for me.
Yeah.
So I come from a little bit different perspective. I have several doctors that will be at events and say, why are you asking me that? Go talk to her. She knows more about that than I do.
Yeah. Well, it's just a question I would like to see kind of answered by NATA in the near future of why is it this way and how can we get out from underneath it? Because I do think the way that athletic trainers are going to make money is going out and doing private practice.
Yeah.
It makes it a more competitive market. People can actually see the different skill sets of what can be provided. And it's, the whole marketing thing of what skills are you really good at, and can you go in and do what that customer needs the way that they need it done?
I think the biggest drawback to that happening is every state licensure is different for an athletic trainer.
And that's
When
true
we
too.
simply had national certification, we had one protocol
Mm-hmm.
of what we did, how we did it, what we're allowed to do. Every state says something different.
Mm-hmm.
Look at concussions. The majority of the states say athletic trainers can evaluate and determine return to play. You go to Ohio, and in the high schools, an athletic trainer cannot determine return to play of an athlete that's concussed on the opposing team. Why? I can do it for my team, but I can't do it for their team when they don't have an athletic trainer here?
Yeah.
Makes no sense. Oregon, a chiropractor can determine return to play, but an athletic trainer cannot. So the difference, and then there are ones that don't even state, what return to play is, any protocols whatsoever. I think that we need to get back to having a national protocol that defines, yes, we can do this, 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 and this. We can bill to insurance directly, not through any proxy who takes 50% of what we're making. I had a clinic for 15 years in North Carolina, cash-based only. Didn't call it physical therapy. It's one-on-one rehab and balance training.
Yeah.
Cash payments. Nothing illegal about that.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's where the marketing comes in, is how do you use the vocabulary to be able to do your job?
And it's back to the politics again. What is politically correct for me to say? I mean, it's just like an athletic trainer. We were taught that we evaluate, we don't diagnose. What's the difference?
You need an A to get to B.
Determine what the problem is, or I diagnose what the problem is.
If you're ruling out stuff, you're still technically diagnosing.
Correct. I mean, just like athletic trainers cannot do adjustments, but we do MOBs.
Yeah.
So it's semantics, and I think we let too many entities get hung up on semantics instead of actually saying point blank, these are the facts. These are what we're capable of doing. This is what we're educated to doing. There's no need for oversight for this. There's need for partnership and professional consult. Yes.
Yeah.
But I can be sued without a doctor getting sued. If I do something wrong now, that doctor is not held liable for me. I'm the one going to court.
Yeah.
So I think we've got a long way to come. I mean, 1955 seems like forever ago to most athletic trainers today. When athletic training officially became a career field. But it's not that long ago.
Yeah.
And we're still evolving. We're just evolving at a snail's pace.
Yeah.
And we don't have the big backing of the politicians to take us where we need to go to have notoriety for what we do.
Yeah.
I mean, in Japan, more people know what an athletic trainer is than in the United States.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's where we need better and more robust marketing at this point. I can't believe that, NATA isn't going in as a sponsor to like the Boston Marathon. Everybody knows the Boston Marathon. How are you not partnering to provide, free athletic training services? Because I know there are athletic trainers that would love to work that. And you get it out there. Yeah.
Many do volunteer their time, but they're not recruited in that way.
Yeah. So it's just, there's ways to do it without having to spend exorbitant amount of money. There are athletic trainers that are excited to get out there for certain events It's just NATA has to get their foot in the door and people will come running to come help.
Or NATA needs to get out of the way of the companies that want to do it or the people who want to do it.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes they hinder a lot of the progress that we could have. You know, support the company. I mean, when they came out with the Go For employment, that shot down a lot of companies like mine, like Black Belt Sports Medicine, because it undermines you. Instead of supporting all the companies that are already in existence, they created their own. And at the time that they created it, you had to be an NATA member or they wouldn't even consider you for any of the jobs. You know, so they were making sure that their bottom line was getting filled instead of taking care of all the people that pay for their bottom line to exist through memberships.
Yeah. I didn't know that part of that whole story.
Yeah, because I applied just to see what it was in the very beginning, and I wasn't allowed to apply because I wasn't an NATA member. I'm an NATA Service Award recipient, but I'm no longer a member.
I love how they treat their own.
Yeah. It's politics, once again.
Yeah. Well, I know it's your day off, so I want you to have some downtime, but I do appreciate you coming on and giving us some of your knowledge. You're always such a pleasure to talk to and learn from.
Well, I always love having the pleasure to talk with people. You know, I enjoy what I do, and sometimes I forget that everybody doesn't do the same things that I do.
Yeah. Hopefully in the future we'll have you on to talk about the balance training and maybe a little bit more into the circuit dynamics, more the specificity of covering that. But let me know when you want to be back on.
Certainly. And one of these days I'm going to get you to come out to Circus.
Yes, I know. I am excited.
Maybe if I doubt I get you back out before you head out of Philly, but
well, we have cell phone notes now, so we can be in touch.
Exactly.
So, well, thank you so much, and we'll have you on soon again.
Okay, it's great talking to you.
That's it for today's episode of To The Bone. I hope we've sparked some new thoughts, challenged your perspectives, or simply reminded you to dig a little deeper. Remember, life isn't just about what's on the surface. Sometimes you've got to cut deeper and get to the bone of what really matters. To The Bone podcast is a product of Daily LLC. It's hosted and produced by Shelby Daly, ATC, and Randy Daly. No clinical decision-making should be based solely on one source. While care is taken to ensure accuracy, factual errors can be present. For more on the show, visit www.tothebonepodcast.com. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Get involved in the conversation. You can find us at www.tothebonepodcast.com. Drop us topic suggestions or be a potential guest. We're all about connecting with you, our listeners. Until next time, stay curious, stay grounded, and keep cutting deep.